In August of 1590, a man named John White stepped off a boat onto a small island off the coast of what is now North Carolina. He wasn't just returning to a colony. He was returning to his daughter, and to a granddaughter he had never met. What he found instead was nothing. No people, no bodies, no signs of a struggle, just empty houses, and one word, carved into a wooden post. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what that word meant, why 115 people disappeared without a trace, and what modern archaeology has finally uncovered about where they actually went. Let's back up 3 years, to 1587. England wanted a permanent foothold in the Americas. Spain already had one, and the two empires were on the edge of war. So a group of investors, backed by Sir Walter Raleigh, sent 115 men, women, and children across the Atlantic to found a new English settlement on Roanoke Island. Their leader was John White, an artist and mapmaker turned governor. This wasn't a random group of adventurers. Entire families made the trip. White brought his own daughter, Eleanor, who was pregnant at the time. On August 18, 1587, Eleanor gave birth on Roanoke Island. They named the baby Virginia Dare. She was the first English child ever born in the Americas. For a brief moment, Roanoke wasn't just a colony. It was the beginning of a new life for over 100 people and the birthplace of England's first American-born child. Then everything got complicated. The colony was struggling, supplies were running low, and relations with some neighboring Native American groups had turned tense after earlier English mistakes on a previous expedition. The colonists convinced White to sail back to England for more supplies. He didn't want to leave. His daughter and granddaughter were just weeks old, but he agreed, expecting to return within a few months. Before he left, White and the colonists agreed on a signal. If they were forced to leave the settlement for any reason, they would carve their destination into a tree or post. And if they left because of danger, an attack, an emergency, they would also carve a cross above it. A simple code. A message left behind in case White came back and they were gone. He sailed in the fall of 1587, expecting to return by spring. He didn't make it back for 3 years. This is the part most retellings skip, and it matters because it's not a mystery. We know exactly why White was delayed, and it had nothing to do with the colony. England and Spain went to war. The Spanish Armada launched its invasion attempt in 1588, and Queen Elizabeth I ordered every available ship in England held back for national defense. White's resupply voyage was grounded, not by choice, but by royal decree. He tried twice to get back across the Atlantic. Both attempts failed. One ship was damaged, another was diverted. It wasn't until August 1590, 3 years after he'd left his daughter and granddaughter behind, that John White finally set foot back on Roanoke Island. He wasn't expecting a warm welcome. 3 years is a long time, but nothing could have prepared him for what he actually found. The settlement was gone, not destroyed, dismantled. The houses had been taken apart carefully, not burned or wrecked. There were no bodies, no blood, no sign of a battle, no sign of a struggle at all. It looked less like a massacre and more like a planned departure. White searched for the agreed-upon signal, and he found it, carved into a wooden post at the entrance to the settlement, in capital letters. The name of a nearby island, home to a Native American tribe White actually knew. He'd met with the CROATOAN people before, and some accounts suggest relations had been relatively friendly. Nearby, on a tree, he found a shorter carving, just CRO. And critically, there was no cross carved above either message. No cross meant no emergency. No cross meant, as far as the agreed-upon code went, they hadn't left under attack. White should have felt relief. Instead, he was stuck. CROATOAN Island was less than 50 miles away. White wanted to sail there immediately, but a hurricane hit. His ship's anchor cables snapped, supplies were damaged, and the crew, worried about surviving the storm season with a damaged vessel, refused to continue the search. They forced White back out to open water, planning to resupply and try again the following year. He never got the chance. Funding for further search expeditions fell apart. War with Spain dragged on. John White died years later in Ireland, having never returned to Roanoke, never finding out what happened to his daughter, his granddaughter, or the other 113 colonists. The trail, a single carved word pointing to a specific island, was left cold. For over 400 years. This is where most documentaries stop. This is also where the story gets interesting. Over 4 centuries, historians have circled 3 main explanations. Theory 1. A Spanish attack. Spain considered English colonies in the Americas a direct threat and had previously destroyed a French colony in Florida. Spanish ships did patrol the region, but there's no Spanish record, and Spain kept meticulous records of ever locating or attacking Roanoke. If they had found and wiped out an English colony, it would have been a diplomatic and military trophy. They never claimed one. Theory 2. Conflict with a hostile Native American group. Relations with the nearby Roanoke tribe, not the CROATOAN, had genuinely soured after earlier English colonists had violently mishandled a dispute over a stolen cup, killing a tribal leader. Later, colonists at Jamestown heard second-hand rumors that some Roanoke settlers had been killed years after the disappearance. But these accounts are inconsistent, second-hand, and separated from the actual disappearance by years, not strong enough to explain a calm, dismantled settlement with a friendly tribe's name carved as the only message. Theory 3. They simply starved and scattered. Possible, but doesn't explain the calm, deliberate carving of a destination. People fleeing chaos and starvation don't usually pause to leave a tidy, single-word forwarding address. None of these fully fit the evidence. And in the 1930s, someone claimed to have finally solved it, with what turned out to be one of the biggest hoaxes in American archaeology. In 1937, a man presented a stone slab, supposedly carved by Eleanor Dare herself, describing the colonists' fate, claiming most had died, but that she had survived among a Native American group. It made headlines across the country. Dozens more Dare stones surfaced in the following years, each adding new details. Historians and later forensic analysis found the carvings didn't match authentic 16th century handwriting or stone weathering patterns. Investigations traced the stones to a small group of people fabricating them, likely for money and attention. Today, the Dare stones are considered a hoax by essentially every serious historian who's studied them. It's a reminder that a 400-year-old mystery attracts genuine researchers and people looking to profit off unanswered questions. The real answer wasn't a stone tablet. It was already sitting in the ground on Croatoan Island the entire time. It just took nearly 500 years and modern archaeology to find it. Starting in the 2000s, archaeologists with the First Colony Foundation and the Croatoan Archaeological Society began serious excavations on what is now Hatteras Island, the same island White had tried to reach in 1590, historically home to the Croatoan people. Led by researchers including archaeologist Mark Horton and local historian Scott Dawson, the digs turned up something remarkable. 16th and 17th century English artifacts, buried alongside Native American artifacts, in the same layers of soil at the same sites. Gun parts, a broken slate writing tablet, a signet ring, copper items reworked in Native American styles, suggesting English metal was being reused and integrated into Croatoan tools and jewelry, not looted from a massacre, but absorbed into daily life. This wasn't a battlefield. It looked like a community. There's also a second-hand historical clue that lines up. In the early 1700s, over a century later, an explorer named John Lawson visited the descendants of the Croatoan people and wrote that some had gray eyes and told him stories of ancestors that could talk in a book, a possible folk memory of literate English colonists. This account is not proof on its own, but it fits the same pattern the archaeology suggests. Put it together, and the most evidence-supported explanation is this. The Roanoke colonists weren't massacred. They weren't wiped out by Spain. They didn't vanish into thin air. They almost certainly did exactly what the carving said. They went to Croatoan, and over time they didn't survive as a separate English colony. They were absorbed into the Croatoan community, married in, raised children, passed down tools and maybe stories for generations. The colony didn't disappear. It stopped being English. Here's what that means for the word carved on that post. CROATOAN wasn't a mystery. It was an answer. John White read it in 1590 and didn't understand he was already holding the solution. He just couldn't safely follow it before nature and politics closed the door. Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the Americas, likely didn't die in some tragic massacre. The evidence suggests she grew up, just not as an English colonist, as part of a community her grandfather never got the chance to reach. That's a very different ending than an entire colony vanished into nothing. It's not a horror story. It's a story about people finding a way to survive when the empire that sent them there simply failed to come back in time. We may never find conclusive DNA-level proof. This isn't case closed in the way a courtroom would define it. but it's the strongest, most evidence-backed explanation we've ever had. And it took 4 centuries, a hoax, and a dig site on the very island the colonists pointed to get there. 115 people didn't vanish. They just stopped being a mystery the moment we finally looked in the right place. If you want to see the next case we're opening, a city that vanished under the sea, not the forest, that one's coming next on the Expedition Files.